Hi, once again. Welcome to Property Matters. I'm Alan Evans, Principal and Owner of Seif Properties in Neisner. Today I would like to talk to you about rental properties. With the economic climate at the moment, and especially the reluctance of banks to grant bonds unless large deposits are paid, the demand for rental properties has increased drastically. There are a few considerations which must be taken when either you wish to rent out your property to a lessee and also when you wish to rent a property from a landlord. Firstly, let's look at the rights and obligations of a landlord. Usually, a landlord will make use of a reputable estate or letting agency to rent out his property on his behalf. An agency will usually offer two options to a landlord. First, a tenant recruitment option, where the agency will source a tenant by means of advertising, or searching through their database of clients to match an ideal tenant for the property. The agency will carry out a credit check on the prospective tenant and will check the tenant's payment records with previous landlords. Also, they will verify employment history and earnings and obtain the necessary copy of ID in terms of legal requirements. The agency will then inspect the property with the tenant, make notes of any defects, and either request that these be fixed by the landlord prior to occupation or to list these in the lease. Assuming that the tenant is happy with the property and the landlord is happy with the tenant, a professional lease is then concluded and signed by both parties. Next, a deposit is usually paid by the tenant equal to a month's rental, and this deposit must be held in an interest-bearing account for the benefit of the tenant. We would always recommend that this deposit is held by the agency, as they have trust accounts specifically for this purpose. The first month's rental is then paid over to the agency, and this is usually their commission. From then on, the tenant pays the landlord directly each month, and the agency will have no further involvement until the lease expires, when they will do an inspection of the property. This type of lease is often common where a landlord lives in the area and is happy to sort out any problems which may arise, such as burst geysers, blocked drains, etc. The second option is a fully managed lease, where all of the above checks are carried out, but in addition, the agency will manage the property on behalf of the tenant and will collect the deposit and the monthly rental and pay over to the landlord less their fee each month. Any problems with the property are then sorted out by the agency, and the landlord does not usually get involved unless there is a major expense that occurs. This is a popular option for landlords who live out of town or abroad. Now for the tenant. Usually an advert will be placed in the paper for a property to rent, or the tenant will approach an agency to inquire what they have on their books for rental. A reputable agency will then take the prospective tenant to a number of properties which are suitable for their needs, obviously having inquired about their requirements and the size of their family and pets, etc. Once a suitable property has been found and the rental negotiated, a rental contract is then drawn up, and any defects in the property will be clearly noted. A deposit must then be paid by the tenant in order to secure the property, and that is usually 1 month's rental. The tenant must insist that this deposit is paid into an interest-bearing account for his benefit, and preferably into an agency's trust account. Depending on the terms of the lease, the monthly rental should then be paid on time, either to the landlord or the agency. What are the landlord's and the tenant's obligations under this lease? It is usual for the landlord to pay the rates, the taxes, homeowners or body corporate levies, and for the tenant to pay for the water and electricity consumed. Also, the tenant will usually be responsible for maintaining the gardens and paying for alarm monitoring, if any. The landlord will usually have to pay for any exterior repairs or any burst geysers, blocked drains, etc. The tenant will pay for any interior repairs that he causes or ongoing interior maintenance. Make sure as a tenant that you have a proper signed lease in place and that your agent has explained all clauses to you so there can be no doubts when problems arise. Quite often, a landlord will let out his property on the basis that it is also on the market for sale. The rental agreement should state this and will also say that you should give reasonable access to any prospective buyers. But remember, your lease is secure. Even if the landlord sells, any new owner of the property must honour your lease and is bound by its terms. Where there is an option to renew the lease on the property, make sure that if you do wish to renew, you give the landlord due notice in writing in terms of the lease, because your failure to do so could end up in you having nowhere to live at the end of the lease period. Also, as a tenant, at the end of the lease, do an inspection of the property with the landlord or his agent, and if there are damages you caused beyond normal wear and tear, you may have to pay these out of your deposit. I would always recommend you use a reputable agency when renting out a property, be it as a landlord or a tenant. I hope you have found this talk useful, and if you have any questions you would like to ask me, please do so by email through MotionMag or directly to myself at Seif Properties. Thank you.